All right, y'all ready? Drum roll. 2022 Mrs. Corporate America is...
Whether you are ready to be a contact center, it is how do you have a better customer service experience. That includes things like having the right technology, having the right processes in place, having the right systems in place, having the right people in place, which make up your operation. Strong operations make for a better customer service experience. That's my answer. I'm sticking to it.
I am the mother of Juanita Coley. I have two girls, one by birth and one by marriage. I have 5 children in all. My first 2 children were boys, but I was so excited to have a little girl. You're not going to believe what I did. On the day we left the hospital, I went straight from the hospital to Florida Mall. And I shopped for little girl clothes. And of course, I paid for it the next day, but that's how excited I was to have a little girl. I couldn't wait to buy some little girl clothes.
I am from Orlando, Florida, born and raised. I went to Catalina Elementary, then I moved over to Blankner. And then from middle school, I went to Memorial Middle School. I was raised with all boys, so I've always been a daddy's girl. I have a sister, but we weren't raised together.
That was my mother's name, and I always figured I would name my daughter after my mother because that was my best friend in life. So that's how she got the name.
When she was about 1 to 2 years old, maybe, I remember sitting her in the high chair, and at that time I was still feeding her. Because, you know, I'm just one of these kind of moms who don't like mess all over. You know, if you're going to eat your food, I want you to eat your food and not make a really, really big mess. And I remember her sitting there in the high chair, and I was, you know, had the food in the spoon, you know, trying to put it in her mouth, and she just, you know, with her mouth closed. I'm like, what's wrong? You don't want to eat? And she's like, no, I can do it. I can do it myself. I can feed myself. And I was like, you sure? And she's like, yes. And I remember giving her the spoon, and sure enough, you know, she fed herself at a very young age. She wanted to do it herself.
I love to learn. Every time I see something, I want to understand, well, how does it work like that? Why does it work like that? What was the purpose it was created? And so I'm always discovering, and life is so big. I knew at an early age, something about life was so big to me that it was like, I have endless possibilities to learn.
One question took hours to answer. And you couldn't really answer the question because every answer or everything that you were smart enough to come up with gave her another question, and the question was always, why? Why that? Why did that happen? Well, this happened because of that. Well, then why? And it was always a why, and she'd been asking questions like that her whole life.
You know, why do the trees grow like that? And why are people like that? And why did we make cars? Where did cars come from? It was at a very early age. It was just like life was just such a big thing that it provided endless possibilities for learning. You know how they say good things never last forever. It was something about me knowing that that good thing would last forever, because you would be constantly learning about something. And I think that was what made childhood and even now life fun for me, is the ability to just always be learning something. My favorite teacher in high school was definitely Miss Gardner, hands down. Like, that was my favorite teacher. She understood teaching. She understood that teaching wasn't just curriculum, right? She used almost everything as a teaching moment. And if you know anything about my learning style, my questions have questions. You know, like, if you give me an answer, I got another question. And Miss Gardner really understood that dynamic of teaching, that teaching wasn't just about textbook. It was about teaching every moment. If you arrived late to class, she made that a teaching moment. If you said something, or if you were, whatever it was, she made everything a teaching moment. And being an avid learner, that was gold for me.
My favorite student, as far as the girls are concerned, Juanita was the girl. She was my girl. She was a very good student. She used to, if I could multiply or clone her a few times, I would have loved to have a classroom full of her, because she was not disrespectful. She turned in her work. She showed up to class. If I asked her to turn in something, she did. If I asked her to help me with something, she did. She was extremely helpful.
She was a good student. I don't remember her ever really having any problems, like with having to learn or be tutored.
She was a brilliant student. I was always amazed by how smart she was. She was a lot smarter than me.
And in middle school, from middle school, I went to Memorial Middle School. High school, I went to Jones High School.
I would have a classroom full of students, and they were all facing the board while my desk was behind them. And I could sit at my desk if I needed to, but I rarely sat. But she would come in preferably before the other students would get there. She would try to. And she would say, "Can I take a nap? I'm so sleepy." She said, "I can take a nap." And one day when I said, "Yeah." But I thought she was going to sit in a seat, and I was going to let her sit in the back by my desk. When I looked, she was under the desk, asleep. And that's when I knew. I said, something's going on here. And I kind of figured it out.
I can't remember if she actually told me or how I found out. During that time, I had just went through a separation from Juanita's father, and I was going through my own emotional struggles during that time. I think I found out, I had left and went down to Miami for a weekend trip, and I think I found out by phone, or, over the phone, because I had this memory of thinking I should just keep driving, because I was so shocked and so disappointed.
I was on a cruise ship on my way out of the country. My phone rings before I get out of range, and her mother says to me, "Your daughter got something she want to tell you." Never me expecting to hear what I heard. She pregnant. At the moment I heard that, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My mind scrambled, and all of a sudden I looked at how far I was away from the dock. And far out, I didn't think I could swim that far, so I didn't jump off the ship. And I said, "Well, I'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll deal with that then." But I can tell you now, you're not having no baby.
After a while, I already knew. She never told me what was going on with her, but I knew. And I think all mothers would agree that besides the old myth, when you dream about fish, there's also that connection. You can just about tell what's going on in these young people's lives.
It was one of the hardest things I ever had to even think about, was my baby being pregnant and how this is going to complicate her life. And I decided that that wasn't going to happen.
When I found out I was pregnant, I actually considered an abortion. However, it was the ultimatum that he gave me that made me actually say, actually, I will have this. It was that stubbornness and that defiance, because it was like, how dare you tell me what I will and won't do, and you aren't doing what you should be doing.
I think my leaving the family contributed, because we talked about that once, and she was telling me that she saw this guy like myself, and he reminded her of me. I don't know how in the
I think the main contributor to that dynamic was the fact that, she was without a father. At that time, Juanita was very much a daddy's girl. And now that her daddy was no longer in the home, she told me that she was looking for someone who reminded her of her dad.
We sat down at Panera Bread, and I told her in no uncertain terms, if you have that baby, consider me as being dead. That's the last day we talked.
It shifted something in me to make me know that, I don't want to say that I'm in the world alone, but being raised with all boys and being a daddy's girl, I always felt surrounded. I always felt protected. I felt like, I really don't have to worry about nothing because I got all these brothers and I have a dad that would do anything for me. But that let me know that that's not the case. And so in that moment, I kind of shifted my perspective on life, that if I was going to make an impact or whatever I was going to do in life, whether that was good or whether it was bad, it was going to be on me, is what I'm saying. And so I think that set the tone, or that also set me on a path to being a teen mom, because whatever I wanted to do, I did.
I remember something that I said when I was talking to her after I found out that she was pregnant. And I said, I'm so disappointed. I've tried everything as a single mom to raise you so that you would not be a statistic. And here you are. You're going to be just like, some of the other young, African-American ladies that I know who, they end up on welfare and they end up, in government housing because they start so young having babies. And now here, I've tried so hard to raise you guys to not be part of the problem and the statistic. And now here you are at 14, you're going to be just like them. And I never forget, when I said that to her, she looked me dead in my face. And I never forget, she said, I bet you, I guarantee you, Mom, I won't be a statistic.
Just like I created this situation, I can create a situation for positive outcomes and positive impacts. If my thoughts could create a situation that was negative, my thoughts could also create situations that were positive. When my dad gave me the ultimatum of having an abortion, or the next time I would see him would be in his casket, and my mom tells me, well, if you have this baby, you will be a statistic. One of the things during that time was, I'll show you. I'll show you. I can show you, because it's something about people's actions that will show you more than what their mouth could ever tell them. And so that's the mode I went into. the time for words are over. I don't want to hear any more the negative words. All I need right now is action. When I was told, hey, because you're a teen mom, this is what your life will be, or because you don't decide to have an abortion, this is what you'll end up doing. At that moment, I made a conscious decision that I would do something and I would share that journey and share that story along the way as I arrived. Being a 9th grader and pregnant, a big period of that time in my life are blackouts. You know, people will tell me now, my mom will tell me certain things, my pastor will tell me things, people who knew me from that time will tell me things, and I'm like, I have no recollection that that even occurred, because I was just in survival mode. Survive, don't be a statistic, don't ask for handouts. Anything you get is because off the sweat of your back, off of your intellect. That was my mentality.
It's a lot going through, so the changes that young ladies would have to go through is just the problem of you're not going to necessarily have somebody who's going to help you with your child.
I wasn't the type of mom who stepped in and tried to alleviate all of what came with that, the responsibilities. I'm the type of mom who says, you make your bed, you lie in it. So I didn't just take her baby away from her and say, okay, go to school, do what you do. No, it's go to school, and now when you come home, you still have to raise your baby because it's your baby.
You couldn't be pregnant and stay in public school, so I had to disenroll from Jones High School and go to Orlando Votech during my pregnancy. And then after pregnancy, I then moved over to Lake Brantley, which is where I graduated from in Seminole County. My junior and senior year, I was working, and this is actually where I ended up discovering the call center, and I broke into corporate America. And then as a result of that, that's where I discovered technology. It was in the call center. And so I balanced going to work. I balanced finishing my diploma, and it was just something that you did. It wasn't something you balanced. Let me tell you emotionally how you avoid becoming a teen mom. Know that you're worthy. You know, I was dealing with worth issues. I was dealing with validation issues. Like I said before, I was a daddy's girl, right? And something shifted in me in those moments, and I wasn't validated. I didn't know I was worthy. I didn't know how big the world was. For me, the world was just my environment that I grew up in, which was on Coley Street in Orlando, Florida, right? That was what I knew of the world. And know that there's boundless opportunities that exist, and you can have it all. And so that's what I would tell a young lady, is that this world is so big that you have your whole life in front of you to experience pregnancy, to experience sex, to experience whatever that thing is, hair, nails, vanity. You have your whole life. And I know that social media and where we are in our generation, we want everything like now. It's instant gratification, it's instant this, because that's what we see. We see life, we look at people's highlight reels. So if you're looking at social media, we're literally, they're called reels for a reason, right? We're looking at people's reels, and we're not realizing all of the stuff that makes up that story, all of the triumphs, all of the failures, all of the pains that make up that 30-second, that 15-second clip. And so my advice to you is understand that there's a huge world out there. There's so much you can do. And that starts with knowing that you are worthy.
I wanna go to war for you. No matter what we're up against, I promise I'll keep fighting this.
When I think about when I met Juanita, I actually met her through her mother. I really don't know how we became friends, when our paths actually changed. I would definitely say it is a sisterhood, and it's one that's developed into a sisterhood. Best friends, confidants, exchanging ideas, laughter, and things like that.
My senior year in high school, I was always very academically ahead. I told you I love learning, so I was that child that went to summer school because I could. So my senior year in high school, I may have had English 4 and maybe one other class. And so the rest of my classes were electives, and I elected to do OJT, being that I was a teen mom. OJT is on-the-job training. And so this is when you get a credit for working a job. And so I went to go work at a company called Wildcard that was in Maitland, Florida at the time. And this is where I was introduced to the call center life. And so I got hired to be a customer service representative. I was taking phone calls for a gift card called Mall of America. Well, the gift card was Simon gift card, which was a gift card at Mall of America that they had at Mall of America. And this was my introduction into the corporate working space, and ultimately what later proved to be my introduction into technology, because it was while working at Wildcard as a customer service rep that I would pick up this book called Blue Pumpkin. And Blue Pumpkin is now known as Variant. And I pick up this book, and I know that I can't even really explain it. It kind of even gives me chills to think about it, because I pick up this book and it's like something went through my body to let me know this is it. It's almost like I knew that if you connect with this will change the trajectory of your life. And that's exactly what it did. I picked up the book and began to read the book. And even though I didn't understand it or understand the concepts or all of the things in it, but I was acute enough and aware enough at that time to know that whatever this book was, whatever this discipline was, it was something that was big. And fast forward to today, workforce management, technology, AI, artificial intelligence, like this is literally what we're talking about 20 years later. And I connected with that in that space and time working at Wildcard. So I pick up this book, I read it. I learn everything that I possibly could about it. And workforce management, there was no opportunity actually for me to even do workforce management in my location that I was working in the Maitland office. The workforce management, you have to understand, the workforce management department was located in Sunrise, Florida, which was over 300 miles away. South Florida is where it was located. How this user guide ends up in my location, to this day, I don't know. Again, that's what I mean by it was like when I picked up this guide, it was a divine, that's good. It was a divine moment. That's all, that's the only way I can explain it, because the workforce management department, again, was not in our location. It was over 300 miles away. So the sister site, the Sunrise location, makes an announcement that they're closing. And that some people got an offer to come to our location. And out of all of the people that got an offer to come to our location, nobody that was in the workforce management department wanted to come to our location. And so I raised my hand, just as naive as possible, and say, hey, I think I can, I've been reading this user guide, have no actual experience. I've been reading this user guide. I think that I can do this. I can run the department. I can, or at least work in the department. And my supervisor says yes. Prior to that happening, I was, again, like I said, I was a customer service rep, but I had started to help with training a little bit. Like, hey, when new hires would come in, I would help them kind of get their paperwork together or different things like that. So again, I still had no workforce management experience, but it gave me enough confidence to raise my hand and say, hey, I think I can do this. So my supervisor says, yes, Juanita, go ahead, shoot, go for it. And in that moment, I instantly felt sick. because I knew I didn't know what I was doing. So I'm in this workforce management role. My supervisor says, yes, Juanita, you can do it, right? So I started to dive into and learn even more about workforce management, the discipline. And so I dove into that. I was learning about 9 months, maybe a year into the role at Wildcard. The Maitland office makes an announcement. Hey, we're closing our location. And I'm like, are you serious? So you can, Juanita, the same offer they gave Sunrise people, they gave us, you know, hey, you can move to Minnesota. This is where the new location will be. I just signed the lease on my first apartment. And again, I'm still not talking to my dad. I didn't talk to my dad for about 7 years.
I was more hurt over them 7 years than she was, because nobody loved me like she did.
I think the first time I talked to him, he may have been, I think he was either incarcerated or he was moving into my home. I purchased my first home when I was 19. And so he was moving into my home. And that was the first time that I had a conversation with him.
She gave me a place to live for a year when I couldn't take care of myself. She did. She made some mistakes along the way, but the only way you learn anything is you make some mistakes. You know, you don't become who you are by not making mistakes. She's been my rock. Here we are today.
So most people don't know this, but I was a licensed cosmetologist. So I'm doing hair, I'm just trying to make ends meet. And then one day a light bulb went off, was like, Juanita, you have a skill set, you know, that you learned when you worked at Maitland, which was workforce management. So I began to apply for roles like that. And I went to go work, I believe, at this time, if I'm keeping the order correctly, I believe I went to go work at Walgreens. And then I went to go work at Liberty Medical. I may have it backwards, but I dove into learning everything I could. And what was key about Liberty Medical was that Liberty Medical was in Port St. Lucie. Port St. Lucie was 2.5 hours away from where I lived in Orlando. And so I drove back and forth every single day to Port St. Lucie to work because I was so determined to get hands-on experience working. I knew once I had broke back into the field that I would never leave the field. It was something that I wanted to do. And so I would drive to Port St. Lucie and back every single day for probably about 6 months or so. And then I end up renting out, this was before we had Airbnb. I started renting a room in this young lady's house, and I would stay down there for like 2 or 3 days and then drive back, and I would do that. And that's because we didn't have Airbnb at the time, so you had to build relationships with people to know you could be safe in their house. And so I did that at Liberty Medical. And so Walgreens, Liberty Medical, that's where I started to really kind of play and tinker in workforce management a little bit more. And then I got the opportunity to go work at United Healthcare. So this was my first big, like, Fortune 500 company that I went to go work in. And I got to see so much of behind the scenes of operations and workforce management. And this is where my career as it relates to workforce management probably really took off, where at this time I kind of knew what I was actually doing. I've arrived at United Healthcare. I get the opportunity to work in the workforce management department still. So I'm still working in the workforce management department as a senior, I think, RTA, and then which is a real-time analyst. And then I moved from RTA to, I think I moved into forecasting or something like that. And so in the workforce management department, you typically have 3 types of roles. You have an RTA, which is entry level. You have a scheduler, someone who schedules the agents and employees, and then you have a forecaster. And so I moved from RTA to scheduling to forecasting to doing reports. And one day, I've always been a learner, and I've always been for like the underdog, and I've always wanted to serve. Those are like 3 characteristics that trends you'll see throughout my life. And so I was asking my supervisor one day, like, what can I do to help more? What can I do? All of these different things. And out of that conversation, we were talking about employee experience, and I'm all for employee experience. So I end up creating a program at United Healthcare, and I called it WOW. And WOW stood for Wonders of Workforce. And this was an employee experience program. So this was before employee experience, what we call now employee experience, was popular, you know. So now we have all these terms, EX and CX, and it's a popular thing. But I was doing EX, employee experience, before it was known as employee experience. And this program I got company recognition for, and it ended up going company-wide. And so fast forward a couple years from United Healthcare, I get recruited to work at Optum, which is a subsidiary of United Healthcare. And they had just purchased a company called Connections, which was a BPO, a business process outsources. It's when they take calls for other companies. So I walk into Optum, and I walk into the break room, and what do I see? I see WOW. I'm like, are you serious? Like, not only had it made it from United Healthcare, but it also had made it to some of its subsidiaries, one which was Optum RX. So that was a proud moment for me. When I moved over to Optum RX, my boss was Lisa Courteau, and she was an amazing leader as well, just one of those leaders that will just continue to push you.
I met Juanita around 2013. And the reason that we met is because the organization that I was working for, United Healthcare, specifically the Optum division, we were looking to hire someone to set up and run a command center similar to what we had set up in Eden Prairie. And this new command center was going to be set up in Orlando. So basically, my first interaction with her was an interview to talk through what it is we were trying to accomplish. And to be honest, when you interview someone, you know, they can have an impressive resume. The interview can go very well, and Juanita is a very well-spoken person, but you really don't know how well this person's going to do in the job until they actually get into the job. And so my first interactions were just throwing this huge project at her and saying, nothing is there. I think the equipment was ordered. We have a room for you, but you need to set up the processes. You need to hire a team. You need to manage the team. And seeing her work was just very impressive. You know, you're very lucky when you find that individual who not only can identify what needs to be done, but they actually go and get it done then. They don't go to other people and just say, this is what you have to do for me in order for me to be successful. You know, she just really went out there, established the relationships, found out who she needed to work with, and, you know, set up the command center. So just very impressive first impression when she started working, and it just carried through, and just a wonderful person to work with. And we just had a really great time working together.
I'm at United, and I've moved from United to Optum RX. I've excelled. I've created employee experience programs. I have helped build out their command center, multi-million-dollar command center, and I leave.
I remember when Juanita told me that she was thinking about going off on her own and starting her own consulting company. I was like, wow, you know.
I left United, and I probably was sick to my stomach leaving United. United Healthcare is such an amazing company. To leave United, I was really sick to my stomach, so much so that I gave my boss a 2-month notice. Like, who does a 2-month notice? And because I was trying to convince myself out of leaving. Like, okay, maybe I really don't have to leave. I can figure out how to do this thing called purpose.
to have that much confidence to do that, to just say, I'm going to go off on my own. So I knew she had these plans to go off and start her own company, her own organization. So we had a quite a long transition time for us to be able to work through how I was going to, transition her out of her role and make sure that we kept things going at Optum the way they needed to go, which was very thoughtful on her part, because she just didn't want to, take off and leave and, give me just 2 weeks notice. So I knew that this was something that she had always thought about doing. I was excited for her, and I really supported her through that transition.
I left because I felt that there was something more that I needed to do and impact, leave an impact on people, and I needed to leave United in order to do that.
She is focused on making an impact. She is focused on changing lives. She is focused on, changing things in her field and in her industry.
So I left and I started Solid Rock.
There's three kind of people in this world. There's people who make things happen, people that things happen to, and those who wonder what the hell happened.
I first started Solid Rock and I was helping startups and small businesses. First of all, I'll never forget, it was September 25th. That's how seared and etched it is into my mind. That was my last day at United Healthcare, September 25th. And I start Solid Rock Consulting. I empty out my 401k. And also at that time of leaving United Healthcare, I was hosting this mega conference. The conference was called Levels to This, because again, I believe that corporate America just understood and they knew, and I was trying to explain to startups and entrepreneurs that it's levels to this.
Levels to This Business Symposium will take place in Orlando next month, and we are joined now by the event host, Juanita Coley.
And so I start this, and I'm doing this conference. The budget is $40,000, which was about what was in my 401k. So I deplete my 401k.
Why do you think this is so important at this time to make sure that people know about how to start their own business? Are you seeing a big surge in people trying to do that?
Well, small business is a $6 trillion industry. So it's a big industry, and we want to make sure that business owners are not only empowered with the Levels to This Business Symposium, but they are equipped. So we want to make sure that they have those tools to keep growing and expanding their business. The conference is what I consider a flop, right? And I'm broke out the gate. You're talking about failing and failing fast. That's how I start Solid Rock.
I think the first year that she was on her own was a little difficult, but she hung in there.
When she first started out with Solid Rock, she had so many ideas. She was just, all over the place.
I'm working at Solid Rock, so I'm running the firm, which is me, myself, and I. Really just kind of figuring out my audience, who I wanted to serve, how I wanted to serve them, who had the money to pay me. I'm really figuring this thing out from the ground up. I'm a believer. And so I had told God, if this is you, I've always given him permission to direct my path. And I said, within a year, I need my first corporate client. And so I leave United Healthcare because I'm stepping out here on faith and believing that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think it was month 10 or month 11. He didn't come through like on month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It wasn't until month 10 or 11. It was right before the 12-month mark. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I need to, this wasn't it. I get my first corporate client. And it was Grain RX, as a matter of fact. And they're located in Philadelphia, and they had some variant work that they needed done and workforce management work that they needed done. And I was the sole consultant that worked on some reporting for them. It wasn't a big job, but it was what I needed to know that I had made the right decision. And this was the path that I needed to stay down. So now I know this was I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Even though, again, I still hadn't figured it all out, I didn't know what my audience would be and what I would even serve them. Because when I got my first corporate client, he had to sell me to sell him. He was like, yeah, I think this is what we need, and can you help? So that was that. And about maybe 4 years into Solid Rock, I get a call from an Aspect recruiter, and they're saying, hey, we need someone with your skill set. You have an amazing workforce management background. We see you've worked at United Healthcare, Liberty Medical, Walgreens, so forth and so on. And we need someone to train and be a consultant on our WFM product. And I was like, okay, one thing I know is workforce management, and I know call centers. And so I get the job, and I'm immediately flying out every week. Every week I'm flying out. And I had used the Aspect product before at a company, but I hadn't used it in a trainer capacity. So you have to understand, my job, I got hired to be a consultant and configure and train this solution that I had only used in maybe a slight user capacity. So my boss, as she's onboarding me to this role, sends me the user guide. I'm familiar with user guides, right? Because that's how I got into workforce management. But this user guide was a little different. This user guide was over 640 pages. I remember because I can remember the page count. And I printed this user guide out. I would be lugging this user guide through airports, through hotel rooms, staying, because I had to go on an engagement to teach it, and had no idea how I was going to teach the curriculum. My time at Aspect, I spent maybe 2 years there doing that every week, going to different organizations, training them on how to use the solution. And many nights, I was learning the information the day before I had to teach it. Like, hey, and so I got really ingenious with how to train classes. I really became a really great trainer, and I got so many accolades on my training because I understood what I didn't know. And so I created something called the parking lot for my training classes, where I would be in training and a student would ask something in my class, and I would say, you know what? I would always validate that what they were asking was a great question. Hey, that's an amazing question. Let's put that on the parking lot. It's not time for that right now in the curriculum. I would put it in the parking lot, and I would boogie it home to the hotel, because I was going to the hotel. It's not like I was going home. So I would rush to the hotel, look at all of my parking lot notes, and that would be what I would learn for the next day. So I knew just enough to get through the day, and anything else, right, that became a parking lot item for me to teach the next day.
One thing I definitely admire about her is her tenacity, her will and determination to overcome any and every obstacle. It doesn't matter what obstacle she faces, she is determined to overcome, even if it means, extra hours, extra study time. I've been in on the phone when she's, had to study different materials that she didn't understand, but she was determined.
When I showed up in those training rooms, they never knew that I had just learned the material the night before for me to teach the next day. And I did that for a couple months until it really started to sink in and I got it and I actually knew what I was doing. But that was my entry into technology. So I moved from operations side at United Healthcare and Solid Rock, kind of consulting and get my feet wet with consulting, to technology. And so I went to go work at Aspect. And then after working at Aspect, then I went to go work at Verint. And this was a full circle moment. For me, this was like, mama, I made it. Like, this is when you write back home and be like, hey, I made it. Because all these years ago, I picked up this user guide, Blue Pumpkin, which we now know as Verint. I pick up this guide, and now, fast forward years, I'm working in this technology company.
I had gathered a pool of candidates that were exceptional, following the process as we do at Verint. When I got to meet Juanita as she was brought in for an interview, and the talent pool that I would have hired everybody in the talent pool is what I'm trying to say. but I had to narrow it down to the top 2, and there was absolutely no doubt whatsoever that someone who comes into a room and is as knowledgeable about workforce management as she is, and is articulate and such a great presence, that made my job easy. I still wanted to hire everybody, but believe me, there was no doubt that she was my top candidate in that pool. So, and she definitely delivered in the ensuing time that she was working for me. There were plenty of customer calls and comments and emails where they were like, "This is great." I got great feedback on her. We actually had surveys in place where they always had to submit those. Nothing but the best reviews. And her work ethic was amazing too. She was definitely probably one of the better and easiest decisions I've ever had a chance to make was to bring her in.
And by this time, I definitely understand the WFM discipline. I understand the technologies. I'm good, you know. But I noticed something during trainings. I noticed that there were so many organizations struggling to adopt the technology. Let me back up. When an organization purchases a system like Verint, this is like the Ferrari, right? This is a Ferrari piece of technology. And organizations didn't even know the rules of the road. So you're wanting to drive a Ferrari, but you don't understand red light means stop, green light means go. You don't understand you got to put gas in the car. You don't understand the discipline of driving, but you have a Ferrari.
Let's make sure you understand, the job that I brought her in for, that's not a supervisor in a call center kind of job, okay? That's an analyst, that's a trainer, which means, you know, communication skills off the chart, right? And it's on a subject that requires, you know, brilliance, okay? I'm not talking smart. It wasn't even 2 months. It was very quick into her thing. She had spent, to my mind, a very small amount of time with one of the other trainers, and I was in a meeting. I was trying to find a resource who could teach quality management in a pinch right away, and I was going to have to borrow from somewhere else or try to get she said, "No, I'll do it." What? You know, I mean, it was so soon. What I couldn't get over was how quickly she picked up scorecard and quality management. And eventually she did some work with speech. I don't know if I ever sent her on one of those gigs, but she understood all of that with very little additional guide. There was no hand holding. She went in, she learned it, and she could deliver it. So
through doing so many of these trainings, I mean, week over week over week, I was on site doing trainings. And I saw as a trend, and this probably was contributed to my workforce management background and being able to identify trends, I saw that there was this huge disparity between how companies bought technology and how they were using the technology versus how the users in the organization absorbed and leveraged the technology. What the technology was created for versus how it was being used in the organization. And it was in those training moments that I had this epiphany. And I said, this is the user adoption gap. That's it. This is gold, you know, like at this moment, I've done hundreds of these trainings, and I have this epiphany. Wow, okay, this is what's missing from the industry. And for a while, I tried to talk myself out of it. I tried to say I kept saying somebody need to solve for this. Somebody got to do something about this. Why is technology being created and users aren't getting full use out of the technology? I kept asking again, why questions. Why? somebody got to do something about this. And one day I got the epiphany, somebody should be you. And if you remember, I had already started Solid Rock Consulting, and I was helping startups and small businesses, and I was doing workforce management consulting, and I was helping entrepreneurs, but I hadn't really niched down. I hadn't really honed in on who my audience was. And through doing so many trainings and seeing there was this huge need and this huge gap, this is where our mission statement was actually born: to annihilate the user adoption gap between technology and the user. And I was set on fire. I wanted to make sure that if an organization bought a piece of technology, not only that they got the right technology, but that they got full use out of the technology. So that was our first actual real mission. And we were at that time 4 or 5 years in. You know, this is when I actually penned the mission statement. I get a groove. I really understand what our service is. I really understand who our audience is, and I definitely understand the why, right?
I told her she wasn't allowed to quit, but she did it anyway, and I totally understood why. She did what all of us should do, and that's prioritize life and goals above whatever that work is that we're in at the moment, even at the level we were performing.
And now I'm able to start bringing other people on to the organization, because up until this point, it was just myself. And it wasn't until year 4 or 5 where I was really able to really niche down and begin to thrive in the industry and begin to bring on other consultants.
It was only, 5 years later when she decided I am going to just focus on growing Solid Rock that it actually took off, because she was able to focus on the one thing. Solid Rock has grown leaps and bounds. She has, quite a few people that's working for her.
So I start to bring on my first employee, which I am shaking in my boots about when I do that. And since then, we've made multiple hires and we've grown exponentially. So we have multiple full-time staff. I think we're at about 12 full-time employees, and we have a slew of contractors that we leverage to staff up and down to meet demand. And so we've grown exponentially. I feel like I'm constantly hiring and training to keep up with the demand, but that's what it's all for. The other thing that really set me on fire, I remember showing up to a customer site, and I walked in, other people, visitors were coming in. They had a visitor and they had an employee side. And so other visitors were going in, they were stating their name, signing in, and just walking in. I get to the desk, I state my name, think I'm just gonna sign in. I say, hey, I'm here, my name is Juanita Coley. I'm here from Aspect to do the workforce management training and consulting. And they ID'd me. This was a moment for me where I knew that more women needed to be in technology. More African American women needed to be in technology. Because I don't believe that they were being facetious. I believe that they were just so unfamiliar and used to seeing a woman and an African American woman show up to do this role that they ID'd me. And again, visitors had gone in before me and I had watched the process. No other visitor got ID'd. And so not only was our mission shaped to annihilate the user adoption gap between technology and the user, our other mission was to normalize women in technology in leadership roles. One of the programs that we started at Solid Rock is called WIT. It's Women in Technology, and it's literally where we take women, or we find women, we recruit women who have no background in technology. and we put them through a course that it's like drinking out of a water hose, so it is intense. But we put them through this course and we train them on technology, and we offer them a role based on how they perform in the program. And that program so far has been a success. I'm looking forward to it growing and being even bigger. But through that program, we've been able to take women who were making $30,000 and bring them in at $65,000, so doubling their income. And I believe that when you impact people's income, then you impact families. And when you impact families, you change communities. And if you can change communities, you can change the world. And so one of the things, how we always end our meetings at Solid Rock Consulting, we always say, now let's go take over the world. And so that's what we're doing. And so I had grown the company, so that was, I'm super excited about that. I had grown the organization, but I knew that I would only be able to take it so far inside of my comfort zone. And in every iteration of growth, I had grown a little bit outside of my comfort zone. But this next level was completely what you all get to see, Call Center Chronicles and social media, this tech influencer, what you all get to see and experience now is so completely out of my comfort zone, because what most people don't know is that I'm an introvert. And I know people say it all the time, no way, yes. I am an introvert, sit me in the closet, lights off, and I am good operating from that mode.
I know that most people, when they see my daughter, they see her as, she's so, happy. She's so excited. She's always seemed to be so bubbly, and she always seemed to be so, just have this good personality and just, just lovely and all the time. But that is not the personality that we see when we see her, when it's just her or her family. We actually see the personality where, she's just being herself, and that is not always happy and bubbly. We have to pull that out of her to get to see that.
So I get the opportunity, I'm presented with the opportunity, hey, I think you should run for Miss Corporate America. And I'm like, Miss Corporate America, like that was so far outside of the scope of something I would have thought to do. And so when I got presented the opportunity to run for Miss Corporate America, I was like, no way. But then I thought back to my purpose and my mission of normalizing women in technology and leadership roles, and I knew that I had to. So I decided I'm going to run for Miss Corporate America, and so it has to be big and it has to make impact. And so I decided to launch this whole nationwide campaign. I don't believe any other candidate actually did this. I traveled from coast to coast talking about women in technology and leadership roles, and this was not a cheap campaign. We're talking about flights, hotels, lots of networking. And so I knew that this was going to cost. And so instantly, when I said I was going to do it, I reached out to some organizations and I said, hey, this is what I'm doing and how I want you to be involved. And I got my first yes to sponsor this campaign from 5'9".
I first got to know Juanita when I started to work at 5'9" and I became the CMO. But it's really hard to actually pinpoint the time, because it feels like Juanita has been part of our journey for so long, and she's ingrained in so much that we do, because we really trust and value the relationship that we have with her. But when I started at 5'9", we also started an influencer program, and that's really when Juanita came onto the radar with the help of the person who actually brought that program to light, which was Laura Mackey. So Laura had the challenge of setting up an influencer program from the get-go. She went out, she looked at the market, she looked at the space in the contact center space, and Juanita came onto our radar. And then we started engaging with her, which was really, really exciting.
And that was huge for me because, you know, it's not like 5'9" and I had this whole long relationship, but they saw what I was doing. They believed in that I could do it and I had the appropriate message, and they said yes to sponsoring. And my second yes came from Barron, which was huge for me as well, because that's where I got my start on workforce management. And so, fueled with the sponsorship from 5'9" and Barron, I lead this campaign and I travel again coast to coast, shaking so many hands, having so many conversations, advocating and talking about asking companies, hey, you have this diversity, equity, and inclusion program. What are you doing with it? What is it beyond the mural on the wall that you're doing? How do you get involved in communities? How can I help you get involved in communities so that women in technology is not an afterthought, or it's not just a mission statement on a wall for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but how do we actually bring it home? How do we realize this goal? And so countless meetings, countless hours poured into this, and not just for Miss Corporate America, but because it was something that I'm truly passionate about.
It was just so exciting. So I remember actually, was when Juanita actually came out to the San Ramon office, the 5'9" headquarters in the US, and she was doing her piece as she was on her journey to Mrs. Corporate America, and she did an interview with our head of HR, our general counsel, and myself. And just the amazing thing about Juanita is her energy and her positivity. It is so great. It is so intoxicating. She genuinely cares about what she does, and she was just so warm and welcoming. And it was just great because it was just having a chat with her, talking about these really serious topics. And that's what's really nice. She has a great, bubbly, friendly personality. She's really welcoming, really warming, but at the same time, she is not afraid to deep dive into those uncomfortable topics. And I think that's what makes Juanita great, because she can balance the two of those together.
The technology queen is in the building. Well, I'm telling you what, Juanita stole the show today. I'm serious. Like your tech brain is so impressive. Like, it was unbelievable to have you a part of this. I'm serious. It was crazy.
Having so many conversations with executive leadership teams, this is how convinced and passionate I was about and had such a conviction about how important this mission was. Regardless of whether I won Miss Corporate America or not, this is something that still needed to be done.
I mean, she blows my mind. Every time I see, where she's being asked to be a speaker, or she's flying internationally, as part of her consulting business.
Every time I saw her, she was running between airports, and she just doesn't stop.
Probably right now, maybe like 20 minutes of sleep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Go take a nap.
I'm gonna do that. You trust me, I ain't gonna take no nap. I'm about to go hibernate, okay?
Okay, all right. I'm with the hibernation. Absolutely. I'm with that.
That's what's about to happen. That's what's about to happen though. A little slight hibernation.
Hey, I was worried for you. Because this is highly documented. Let us call for help now.
Help me! Help me!
This ain't.
So I traveled week over week, having so many meetings talking about women in technology and leadership roles. And then the week comes of Miss Corporate America. What most people don't know is that I'm anemic, and I also have asthma. And so I normally, when I travel, my normal travel routine is when I come home, I normally do a lot of self-care stuff. Like I have this routine, I call it my cocktail, where I will do like an emergency, boost my system with vitamin C. I get a chance to do all of those things. And that's my normal routine when I come home. June, I didn't come home. So pretty much the entire month of June, I am traveling. I'm not getting a chance to replenish and take care of myself. And so when I arrived on site to the hosting hotel for Miss Corporate America, I collapsed.
The day of the MCA pageant, you know, she was being wheeled down to the pageant in a wheelchair, you know, and even the days before she was in a wheelchair. And it really hurt me to see my friend hurting so much.
To push yourself to that limit, you know, you got to take care of yourself. You're no good to anyone if you're not any good to yourself. So you got to do self-preservation first. You got to, you know, sometimes you have to step back and say, you know, is this worth it? Because if I do something to damage my body or myself, then I'm no good to nobody.
If it had not been for my husband, my best friend, I don't think I would have made it through to be on stage.
Lord, we just thank you on today, Lord. We just thank you for waking us up and resting us to see another day. Lord, we just ask that you continue to protect and watch over Juanita as she gets ready to participate in this contest. Lord, shield and protect her, keep her safe from all harm and danger, Lord. Touch her body, Lord. Continue to just heal her where she's hurting and where she's weak. Lord, I just ask that you continue to just build her up, Lord. We just thank you as we get ready to head down. Lord, just protect us. And Lord, we just ask that you continue to guide us and continue to heal. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Showtime.
I'm wondering how someone is so smart, also has such a bubbly personality, is also so good on stage as a speaker, right? And has that kind of nerdy, smart brain going on. Like I'm missing out on a couple pieces there, right? That's a crazy combination.
All right, y'all ready? Drum roll. 2022 Mrs. Corporate America is...
I have won the title of Miss Corporate America.
The new 2022 Mrs. Corporate America is Juanita Coley. Wow.
Well, when she won, I mean, I was not surprised, but she did it. To see her up on that stage and to win, it was just mind-blowing. And to have her family there, to have her girls there, and that dress was phenomenal.
When Juanita won that crown, I felt like standing up going, we did it, because it wasn't just a victory for her. It was a victory for us as a family. Gosh, it was a victory for every other, I don't want to get teary-eyed, but it was a victory for every other Black woman that has worked so hard to achieve something, because it's Miss Corporate. It's not the beauty pageant, but it's corporate. It was an achievement that says, and let me know, and let every other Black woman out there that owns their own business, that you know what, if you work hard, you can achieve anything that you want to achieve in this life if you work hard.
I think the fact that she won Mrs. Corporate America and her sheer determination and focus on that, it's incredible. She genuinely is so determined about everything that she does. And so you just look at her and you're like, that's incredible. That's an inspiration. And you just feel even more inspired because she had to overcome some massive hurdles.
And there was some people in the picture, but then I had to look twice because I noticed the crown. And I said, Juanita! And boy, I was done. I was done.
And she won. It didn't surprise me at all that she won, but I am just constantly amazed at how she just continues to grow and just become, more successful. And I'm just so happy for her. I'm just so happy for her.
Yo, what do you think is next for Juanita?
What's next for Juanita? I think she can take her real life experience and just amplify it even more. So more presence at, being seen as a thought leader.
Continuing her pursuit and making big changes and big impact in the tech industry, especially for women, especially for minorities, the underdog, people of color, young people, people without degrees, just different categories that don't meet the traditional tech individual.
She is a prime example, and this is the time for her to go into different locales and talk to teen mothers and how they can work their way out of it. That's what she definitely needs to be doing. Middle school, even 5th grade, middle school and high school, and maybe a college student who's not sure what they want to do and is in their 5th year of college, still trying to help with a major. Technology, huge.
She knows no boundaries, and it's just very exciting. And I know she's in just a really good place. And I think everyone that she works with is going to benefit just from knowing her and interacting with her. And I just wish her all the best as she continues. And I totally expect to be continually blown away by everything that she does.
Seeing Juanita being in even more spaces, even outside of contact center. So what's next for Juanita? Take over IT.
With that, girl, let me tell you, the sky is the limit, because Juanita's mind is a very unusual mind. And she's always trying to do the next thing. She's always trying to stay on the cutting edge. She's always trying to be innovative. She's always thinking outside of the box. So I don't know, but I do know whatever it is, it will have something to do with tech, IT.
And I don't know if I can thank that for her. She done already way surpassed anything that I could have thought that, you know. But my nickname for her was Big Shot, because she always wanted to be a big shot. So I guess she got what she wanted. She's a big shot. And I just want to see how big a shot she become. Had I drew the script for her life, I couldn't have did a good a job as she had done. So that's what I am more proud of.
I'm proud of her, okay? I think all I would say on that front is that she clearly has a path in mind. And so I would say two things. I would like to see her continue following that path. And then if there's ever anything that she would ever need from me to assist in that path, I think she knows I'm always available to assist. There's been moments in my career where I'm like, that was awesome. And when I look back at the time I spent with her, that was awesome.
When I talk about somebody that's in the pocket for me, that's my girl. And when I talk about somebody who's loyal, who's gonna be there, good, bad, or the ugly, that's Juanita, you know? What's impacted me is watching her life, watching her overcome, watching her, you know, when she wasn't 100% sure about what she was doing in the tech industry, she still went out there anyways. She launched into the deep. But I also want to see her taking time as well too for herself, to make sure that, you know, she's taking those quiet times that she personally needs to recharge, re-energize as well too. So I will definitely always be about team rest and her taking time for herself as well too.
I would like to see her maybe slow it down a bit to enjoy the journey, to develop where she's at now, to allow that to develop a little bit more. Life is a journey. And when we spend so much time thinking about the next, then we forget about the now.
One thing I am good at and I have learned is building relationships. And so there are so many people who have contributed to my success, the good and the bad, right? I think many times when we attribute success, we want to take all of the good things. But there have been negative things that have shaped and molded me into the person that I am, and allow me to have the grit that I have. You know, I am grateful. I am still learning. I'm forever humbled because I come from humble beginnings. But I think that that's one of the things, if anything, it's that ability to leverage community, build relationships and leverage community. You know, I've overcome so much. I've learned so much, but I'm still on the way.
Yeah, she gonna do what she do. Hell, you'll find out later, because you never see it coming if you ain't really paying attention until she chopping off your head.